Come in. What I'd like to say is the final time we're going to talk about what's gone on with the Celtics regarding the suspension of Ime Udoka. There was a press conference today at the Arbeck Center in Brighton. Bobby and I were both there, along with a lot of other Celtics media, news reporters, trying to get some clarity on the situation that has led to, and again, really fast-moving situation, Bobby, where for the less than 48 hours since the news broke that there was something going on with Ime on Wednesday night, here we are Friday night. He's done. He's gone for the year. Chances are it's very likely he's never going to coach the Celtics again. People were hoping for clarity today from the press conference. I don't know why. People were hoping for that. I think it was very unlikely to happen. Obviously, because you're dealing with private matters, you didn't expect that the organization was going to give too many details into what happened. And while the details might seem unnecessary, might seem gossipy, without the full scope of what happened, it is really difficult to for people to kind of wrap their minds around why was this punishment so harsh? Why was it so severe? Why was it so swift? Bobby, are you going to watch Syracuse all night, or are we going to do this thing?
No, I'm pulling up my notes. I got a lot of notes from the presser here.
I'm pulling Bobby away from the orange, so I feel bad about that. But there are some things we learned, and Bobby, I want your take on just in terms of whether you thought there was enough clarity, whether you got answers you were looking for. I know you asked a couple questions in there as well. What we do know, just to go through the whole thing, lengthy investigation. They discovered it over the summer. Discovered something going on over the summer, was brought to their attention. They described the situation as violations, not violation. They had an independent law firm come in and look at things, interview a bunch of people internally, try to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. When they got the report, they clearly, whatever it was they saw in it was so ghastly or so severe that they moved very quickly to suspend Ime for the year, and I believe ultimately will lead to his resignation or termination. And I don't think he ever returns to the Celtics again. I think they looked shook today, Bobby. I've never seen Brad look like that at all.
Brad on the verge of tears.
Brad on the verge of tears, and we'll play some of the press conferences from the sound bites to you, and I'm sure several of you have seen it already. But Brad was shook. He was angry. He was sad. He was all of it. As emotional, not just at the moment where he actually showed some emotion. He looked like he was going to cry, talking about the women involved in it. He just looked like the whole situation was deeply upsetting for him, both in terms of having brought Ime in, finding out all this stuff, knowing that this is going on at his workplace, whatever it was, having to move on from Ime and whatever turmoil that all of this has caused. Wyc, too, was very resolute, at least in his belief that they had no choice but to do what they did. Again, without details, it's difficult to say that, but the Celtics believe 100%, I think, without any wavering, that they did the right thing here. But again, we don't have full details. So, Bobby, just your kind of reaction to the press conference. And again, obviously, they're trying to protect the privacy of people, so it's really hard. It's really hard to get details here. My biggest question. Well, first, let me get your thoughts, and I'll get you to my question and some of the unknowns that I do think are that still matter.
Well, three things I thought went well. I thought they set the right tone of empathy for some of the victims of the past couple of days, people who bore the burden of the speculation and everything else that went on that we've discussed pretty extensively on the show here. So I thought Brad did a good job with that. Of course, there were many things you knew weren't going to get answered, though I thought Wyc did a good job of dropping bits and pieces here or there where necessary to give you an idea of what went on, even if we don't have specifics at this point. A couple of the words he dropped were interesting throughout. And beyond that, I thought the questions were great. I thought all the questions, even some I wasn't thinking of, like Joe Mazzulla's past and some of the transgressions he had, I thought hit the mark well. And they answered some, didn't answer others. I think there's still a lot of questions, particularly about the process that went on here. When they knew, how long they let it go on, and at what point red flags went up and this law firm came up. When Wick answered that timeline question, which I thought was one of the most important of the day, he gave a vague answer about how it came up earlier in the summer. They quickly addressed it. But later in the presser, he said this really heated up over the last couple weeks, last month or so. And Shams reporting had said, what, July? This became known to some within the organization, and it
Yeah.
really didn't get tackled until very recently, when this female staffer said that Ime was using some unwelcome language toward her, however Shams phrased that. So there is some disjointedness in the story right now of how the
Well,
organization went
yeah.
about solving this. And that's the big question, right? They were really forceful in their defense of their
Two
policies.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're
And
right.
there's still some questions about that, I think.
So there's two questions, and Bobby, I think you kind of you took us into that direction. And there's some more reporting in addition to what was said at the press conference. Gary Washburn of the Globe reported in an article, posted not too long ago. According to an NBA source, Udoka had a clause in his contract that covered fraternizing with coworkers and was warned about potential inappropriate workplace relationships until the franchise was finally forced to hire a law firm. So this is what. And this makes sense because it does jive with the reporting that came out late last night in terms of that Shams put out there that they learned about the relationship in July, and then later on it became something that became problematic. So again, it's a bit of speculation, but it does sound like they were tolerating it for a period of time, and then we're like, uh-oh, this has gotten bad. Maybe felt that they should have, and this is where my question is, did they fall asleep at the wheel a little bit? Did they allow this to go on when it shouldn't have gone on? Do they kind of feel bad about it? Do they know that? Are they protecting themselves here from any potential litigation by trying to jump out in front? I think that component still exists here in terms of them, and it's understandable in a garden variety, and again with the caveat that we fully understand a person with the stature of Ime Udoka having a relationship with anybody in the organization is troublesome because of all of the negative things that can happen. Is there such a thing as consensual relationships? Given the power dynamic at play here in an interoffice relationship, it's always going to be problematic. That's why rules are in place. Would he have been fired over that if it was totally consensual and nothing came out of it? The answer based off of the press conference today was no, because what we also learned is if there's a policy about fraternizing and dating employees, none of the women or woman is going to be suspended or disciplined over whatever had happened here. So I think they would have allowed, and they did allow whatever to have happened for a period of time, and now might be thinking we really should have put the hammer down.
Yeah, so this is the key paragraph from that Shams report. Some members of the Celtics organization first became aware of the relationship in July. At the time, team leadership was led to believe by both parties that the relationship was consensual. So that's where you think they let this fly, right? There wasn't a zero tolerance rule against relationships within the building here. But sources said that the woman recently accused Udoka of making unwanted comments toward her, leading the team to launch a set of internal interviews. So there's that law firm at that point. What's the word here? Is this harassment? Does this reach that level?
As soon as it gets to the point that it's unwanted, it's harassment. So again, if it were cut off, if it wasn't, if it was trying to be taken to a different level, as soon as it gets uncomfortable and there are advancements made that make the other person not feel comfortable anymore, it's that you're into the period of
and
harassment.
you mentioned this. Wick used
You're into
that
the
word
realm of
late in the
harassment.
presser.
He did, but he was talking about things that I didn't want to tie it fully to the situation. He did talk about that they are cognizant of that in regards to their workplace culture, and they're certainly going to look out for things like harassment. He didn't have to say harassment, but he did say harassment. So again, everything points to it having at some point become unwanted, or it became problematic, and that's a component. What we don't know is, so that's one question we don't know. Did the Celtics find out, let it slide, and kind of paying the price for it? Possibly. That also kind of dovetails into my second question here. And again, this is why details are important. And I've gone back and forth on this. Actually, a lot. Some people have mentioned in the chat, and I know that you saw it, Bobby, and we talked about it. That Matt Barnes video, Matt Barnes, former player, came out initially very strongly in support of Ime. Put out something on his Instagram today, walking back his support and saying, "I'm sorry." That was wrong. And we know Matt Barnes was involved in a domestic situation dispute with Derek Fisher and things like that too, and some real behind the scenes drama. But his initial reaction was Ime got done dirty, and then he said he had somebody call him who knew exactly what happened and told him, and he said he was mortified and horrified. And when the details come out, you'll all feel the same way.
What did he say? It's 100 times worse than anyone
It
thinks.
is, and that is, and again, here's the thing. That is so damning. The problem is you don't know who Matt Barnes' source is, and you don't know if Matt Barnes' source is getting things second, third, fourth hand, and it's a bad game of telephone. But if he in fact heard from somebody who's intimately aware of what went on and reacted the way he reacted, that was very damning. So my second question revolves around this. Is it something that was so morally reprehensible that this was the only action they could take and anyone would have done the same thing? Or is it a cover your ass situation where they're more concerned with legal ramifications, partially due to the fact that they were asleep at the wheel and allowed this to happen, and possibly had kind of, weren't paying enough attention to what was going on in the workplace, and this got out of control, and now they're worried that things are going to happen and stuff's going to blow up in their face, and this is a way to cover themselves from this or anything down the road. And if that's the case, the second one is going to sit worse with the players than the first. And so they addressed the players and what they told them, and their reaction was a little vague there, Bobby. It was kind of like, yeah, obviously no one wants to hear this happen. So it's always come down to that for me. Look, if Ime did horrible shit and deserved everything that's coming to him and more, no one's going to dispute that. If he was a monster and the stuff was indefensible, it doesn't matter if he was a good coach, if the players liked him. If it's borderline, or if the players think that the Celtics might have overreacted, or the Celtics don't think that what he did rose to the level of of the punishment that he got, you could have some problems. And that's something that we don't know yet. That's the kind of next shoe to drop here when we talk to the players on Monday at Media Day.
Yeah, and that was alluded to several times. I followed up on it asking, is this in line with some of these policies and procedures that Wick was talking about earlier? And he said they had dealt with stuff like this in the past and they followed, similar guidelines in this spot. While at other times saying there really wasn't a precedent for me to follow with this punishment. I had to go off my gut and my feel and my 20 years. A little, talking out of both sides of his mouth at times when it comes to this. And that was one of the key questions was, why was this a year? Which, as we've talked about, is an unprecedented punishment for a head coach or any official within a team. And why wasn't it a firing if it rose to that level? And that's where the second part of what you were discussing, the whole legal side of this and what's going on behind the scenes with the lawyers and, what are they trying to cover up on their own end? And did they follow a good process on this? I really try to hit on that. Is the process within the team when it comes to this a solid one? Does it need a change? Wick even alluded to it, right? I'm going to talk to some people and see if this is a little bigger than one individual case here. I think it's one case, but I'm going to look into this.
I'm not going to lie, Bobby. I've worked places. I've heard workplace stories where the management is, I'm not saying this happened with the Celtics, but management is so out of touch that they have no idea what's going on the ground floor and are mortified and shocked when they hear some of the stuff. Whether it's, I'm not saying stuff that rises to the level of harassment. I'm talking about a culture, a toxic culture, things that might exist, things that are going on that they have no idea about. And yes, you'd feel if you had allowed stuff to happen, if there were a million warning signs and you ignored them all, you'd certainly be a little bit worried that that's going to come back on you in some way. So I do think they're a little rattled in terms of the culture.
Didn't they seem a little flustered today?
They did. Like I don't know what kind of mess we have on our hands, but I think, again, the full scope of the report probably painted a picture that they were not fully expecting to see, and they were definitely shook by it. They were definitely shook by the findings.
And there was one really good question that seemed to rocked them and, had them looking at each other. And, a pretty short answer from Stevens after, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but that Shaughnessy question of whether the vetting of Udoka was appropriate. Now, would this have come up in a vetting process and an interview? I'm sure there aren't people or sources close to Ime or Ime himself, of course, saying, "Oh, look out, you get a little loose in here." But they did seem to be a little taken back by that question. Like, did we do the right amount of vetting here? Did something happen in other places? Because that was what Shaughnessy was getting at. Had you heard through Udoka's past stops of conduct similar to this, whether in San Antonio or Philadelphia or Brooklyn or wherever, playing career, is many stops throughout the league. And Stevens delivered a pretty short response to that.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think that's the answer is the real answer is yes, of course he was vetted, but they're going to wonder whether he was vetted enough.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty worried that they'll find out that other stuff could come out. This is how this happens a lot. Okay, when things like that, when a person, let's say it was to the level of that it was very, very bad and rampant and multiple violations involving multiple people. You think Ime Udoka had been a saint at every place he'd ever worked up until here, and then just lost his mind in year one as a head coach? His first year as a head coach, had this great opportunity and just said, "Screw it, I'm going to do whatever I want here." That seems unlikely. If this is a thing that he did that was out of control, chances are that's been a thing at multiple stops along the way.
It's possible.
I just think it's not some. Just because something, I think this is a problem we have with lots of things. We're talking about second chances. Just because it's the first time somebody got caught, it doesn't mean it's the first time they did it. And so that's, I think, a concern here, which is, to the best of our knowledge, I don't know that he did, but I think they're worried that some stuff might come out. And how many times have you seen that, where there's an incident with something and then you hear a bunch of backstory sort of things? I wouldn't be surprising. I don't want to accuse of anything. I have no idea. At the end of the day, it might have been one inappropriate thing where he just acted poorly and showed bad judgment, but they still thought that was enough. We don't know.
We've discussed the levels to this, right?
Yeah.
Different organizations have different policies on the relationships. Some might be more lax, and this might be more of a normal thing here, having a relationship within the workplace. Of course, we think this rose to a new level possibly here based on some of the reporting, but that might be a factor here too. And this is why you start to look at the organization and the policies in place here. If there was no rule against it, and we talked about that rule, like, why would there be a rule in place that bars relationships within the workplace? Well, this potentially, based on Shams here, started off as something that was fine, wouldn't concern
Started off
anyone.
as something that the Celtics believed was fine, and that's
Yes.
again where they are. That the important thing is the Celtics believed this to be okay, and kind of let it go. At least based on the reporting and based on what we can piece together here, as you said on the timeline, when they found out, when the legal got involved, then when things really heated up. And
Yep.
the things heating up makes you think that the other stuff came out through that investigation that they weren't fully expecting. They might have gone in looking for one thing and found others. And so that's that. Sorry, someone's talking about, and Terry, this is a fair point. And I've addressed this over the shows we've done, this being part of the culture and the attitude. Of course it is. I know a lot of people. Stephen A. Smith's made a lot of headlines, for his defense of Ime Udoka, and he's been standing by it. But
And you said Barnes too viewed it a certain way to start. I think everybody viewed it at the
agree or
start.
don't agree. Yeah, whether you agree or don't agree, one thing that people have discussed, which is legit, is culture. And I've said it here too. How many situations across the league do you think there are right now where there is a coach or an executive or a GM or someone of that nature with that certain stature that is maybe doing something they shouldn't be doing, some infidelity, some affair, something going on with somebody who works within the organization, maybe not somebody who's a direct report, but someone somewhere in the building in marketing and sales and blah, blah, blah. And who knows? I bet a ton. I bet quite a few. I bet there's a bunch of people right now thinking like, yeah, I did that. I'm actually doing that. It is a cultural thing. I think it's not just sports. I think it's power. I think that happens a lot. And so, yes, but certainly it is with sports. Everybody's heard the stories about people going on the road and having, different, doing different things in different cities and X, Y, and Z. It's almost a joke at this point. So, yes, of course, it's a cultural thing. It's different when you are an authority figure and a person in a position of power. So the dynamic is a little different. As far as why Ime wasn't fired, a couple of things I think you can very clearly say. There's nothing illegal in the sense of, if it's illegal, you had to have charges pressed, and if it's illegal, also immediately you have grounds for termination. I think the reason there isn't termination is this is something they interpreted based off of a report and based off a series of findings that they themselves gotten. Nothing that is criminal, it raises to the to that level. So right now they're working out the money, and how can they fire with cause and get rid of somebody and terminate all of their contract without them suing or without them demanding it back. So right now, I think one of the reasons he hasn't been let go is money and trying to figure out how that's going to work. But I've thought that from the get-go. 1-year suspension is basically just please go away.
Right, and there was also reporting that, and you wouldn't imagine it's from Ime's side, that, oh, maybe he'll step down, maybe he'll resign, and then a couple hours later he's not stepping down.
Yeah.
Though I think what's key at this point, listen, Udoka, if he did what we think he did here, or what's been reported to have done, we know he's in the wrong, right? So that's a given. There's questions to ask.
It's the wrong. It's how wrong. Yeah, it's how wrong. How did the team handle it? And is the team more worried about itself than
because the team's in a really strong position here, right? Udoka's the one being accused here. He accepted it. He puts out the statement. Wick said he told me he's accepting this punishment. So there's not really the butting of heads we thought was possible here between Ime's side and the Celtics. Ime, from that statement, right, you assume he's basically laying down his arms here and saying, I screwed up. What am I going to do? Fight this when I know I did something wrong here, potentially?
He could also be saying that because he knows that right now he's concerned about the money.
Yeah.
So
what I really want to get out of today is, and we really didn't get, is what can change for the team, right? Because something went wrong here. If that athletic report's true, and this started as one thing, and the organization took a lax approach to it, and it became something worse where an employee got harmed here in some way, that's on the organization. The organization's going to have to change and evolve from that. And we've had situations like this in sports where, in this sport specifically, where the league took a longer look at the Phoenix Suns. And way back when, I heard people talking today about what happened with the Knicks under Isaiah Thomas, right? That was a whole internal review and tear down of that front office. And they found out what was going on with the Knicks at that time was rampant. And it was a terrible workplace. That's not necessarily what's going on here. And again,
look,
Wick said he thinks this is isolated, but who knows?
You've seen this, right? I mean, there's real world examples right now in the sports world where this is happening, and toxic cultures are being investigated at a very high level. You had and teams do this all the time. Like, we'll do our own investigation, and sometimes that works, and sometimes it's not enough. You had the Washington football team doing its own, ridiculous kind of shadow investigation of their own things, and the friggin' Congress gets involved. Like, yeah, no. We're going to look at this now. So it goes well beyond, public embarrassment. And that is like, I do not like, oh my God, do we have the most toxic workplace in the world where like predatory behavior is completely allowed and ignored? Like, oh my goodness, that's terrifying for the organization. So that's why, again, I don't know what they found, but again, it shook them so much that they immediately suspended Ime within getting the report. With like a day after, they're like gone, and
for a
year, and they looked shook today.
Yes, and
so
I like
the
comparison of I like the comparison to like a college program. Oh, we're gonna self-report and we're penalizing ourselves 1 year. We're suspending ourselves from a bowl game here, and the NCAA comes through and maybe they add something on, but usually more often than not in college, a program's going to self-report, do its own investigation, penalize itself, and hope that that's all that comes out of it, right? for the Celtics, with no league intervention here, right? Yeah, this isn't the league coming down and taking a look at them, with really no noise at all, right? There'd been no rumors or anything that this was going on. We talked to Ime in late July. Everybody's getting ready for camp. Everybody's back. Nobody knew this, right? We're all talking about different things, the team and the roster and the center situation. And then days before training camp, the team presumably, right, goes to Woj and says, there's been a violation here. We're about to levy a significant suspension. We're about to hammer Ime. And here it is. It's for 1 year. And this is all coming from right within the Celtics. So this wasn't necessarily needed, right? But they saw something here and they said, we better come down hard on ourselves here before someone else takes a look at this, or this becomes something bigger.
Luis is asking here, and I think it's a fair question, so I'll answer it. Is everything really tight-lipped, or you guys can't speak on it? There are legitimately no details beyond what type of internet sleuthing that you guys are all privy to as well. Of course, you hear chatter. We're in the media. You're going to hear a lot of it. Nothing that anybody feels strongly about or concrete about at all. It is very interesting. There is no idea. One person, two people, multiple people, the extent, whatever Matt Barnes is referring to, that he says he found out the real story and it's 100 times worse than people think. We haven't heard an inkling of that. That's the whole thing, is like, it's possible right now. All of the stuff that's gone on the internet has amounted to, maybe one affair, maybe two, maybe something involving people in the organization, maybe whatever. If it's 100% worse, 100 times worse than that, it could be horrific when you finally hear that. And again, that could make a lot of sense to both, again, their reaction, how swiftly they suspend, how swiftly and decisively they handed down, again, the longest punishment, the most severe punishment ever handed to a coach or executive in the league, that quickly, without any hesitation at all. I am wondering what happens. What I'm almost shuddering to think what we could learn off of that, just based on, like I said, off of the Barnes thing and off of how quickly they reacted here.
Yeah, and the leaks was another thing that got addressed here today. They came out forcefully against the fact that someone internally would leak that. The
Not
details,
100%, Kes. Yeah, 100 times worse, right?
yeah.
Unreal.
What's worse, 100% worse or 100 times worse? You got to do the math on that.
100% worse is twice as bad. It's 100 times
100
worse.
times. Way worse than 100%.
No, I mean, but that's fine. That's fine. Again, we're not hiding anything, and we're not tiptoeing. The problem with this, somebody asked me, a former colleague of mine, called me just to get my take on things today, and we're just talking through it. Someone I worked with, and I have 10 different opinions on 10 different potential scenarios, because it is so hard without full details to really settle in on a take. And I don't think takes are important. I think just basically interpreting what it is that we know, information being given to us, and just reacting to it is really all we're here to do. And I'm not here to wildly speculate, but they leave open the possibilities of certain things going on that you just don't know. So you are wondering if and when that kind of next shoe drops, how ugly that's going to be. I think the next thing that's going to be really telling for us, Bobby, is going to be when we talk to the players on Monday. Monday is media day. And again, the way they reacted about telling the players was not, and I wonder if I have that one. If I have that, I'll put it up. What was your take on that?
I don't think I clipped that one, but Wick said the players are very concerned by this. It was not a welcome development, and that's basically where he left it. I think Brad might have talked about it too, but that's been in the back of my mind. How does the team view this? Because by all accounts, they learned over the last 2 days, just like everyone else did. Shock, a complete shock over this. No player reactions yet. But you'd imagine, and Stevens even alluded to this, that these players have a strong relationship to Ime, many of them. And this is going to be jarring for them, losing that voice and losing that figure in the room. And they're probably questioning, what was the process here and how did it come to this? And really 1 year? So I'm I'm super curious to see what the sentiment is in the room. I don't even
So
imagine what they're gonna say unless they just dance around it completely and avoid it, but I'd
yeah.
imagine some guys are gonna speak their mind.
Yeah, I don't have the player bite, but someone just put this up here, Dave Brown, just on the using Woj to leak it. Look, a lot of people speculated that because that's that's what Woj is for. Woj is for put this out there. We don't know how or why it got out there. What makes sense to me is that it came from within the organization because it spoke to the suspension. It was also half a story. I don't know. Could have come from other
It didn't
places.
have the details, right? The
It didn't have the
first one.
details. It didn't have the details. It only spoke to suspension and discipline, which you think, who knows about the discipline outside of the people making a decision about discipline? And that was why a lot of people thought it was the organization. Um, I don't know what they would have benefited from by having it out there, and that's why I'm not sure. But here's the soundbite on that and the timeline.
I can say a few things, and I have a few bullet points to add, and then Brad will have some words. I can say that as soon as we learned there was a potential situation, we immediately brought in a respected law firm to conduct a thorough investigation and impartial investigation. And they took some time. And we actually concluded that investigation with a report 2 days ago. So that's the reason for the timing here. There were leaks, by the way, around that time. Obviously, we would have nothing to do with that and nothing to gain from that, and any insinuation about the leaks. We don't know where they come from. They're part of the NBA, as we all know in this room, but it's really unfortunate. And it's unfortunate also that female staff members of the Celtics have been dragged into the public eye unwillingly and inappropriately, and we take a strong stand against that and just regret it for them.
So that was the bite. They strongly pushed back on the leak. I don't know that it matters deeply at this point whether they did or they didn't. What I will say to Wick is don't use the word leak, because leak is a damning word, because that means it was leaked. Like one of you put it out there on purpose. Just say, I don't know how he got that information, but regardless,
I
don't
think
know
it's
how many.
worth taking a minute on that, right? Because the unintended consequences and something we did hammer them for, right?
Yeah.
Is the fact that that directly led to the speculation about which female employee it was, and the team's just kind of standing there in the wind for a day. And listen, I don't think a leak's always strategic, right? Maybe something like the Woj one is, where, all right, we're getting ready to put out this suspension. We're not going to blow up the world with this press release here out of the blue. Let's kind of prepare everybody a little bit through Woj. There's a violation, there's a penalty coming, and then of course that third factor we talked about, it's going to be significant. We're laying down the law here. That's kind of an early way to get your messaging out there.
The problem isn't whether the Celtics leaked it, Bobby. The problem was the incomplete reporting allowed a narrative to kind of take control.
The second one,
The
right?
second one, it was a disaster. So Woj is getting banged. Let's just talk about the reporting a little bit. I know the Celtics said they didn't leak it. I don't know whether they did or didn't. Again, it feels like it's something that would have come from the organization, but I don't know. You think they gave someone saying, could it have been Ime? You think they told Ime, we're probably going to bang you for a year before they did it? Like before they decided to, before they had that conversation? I don't know. That seems a little much, I don't know what Ime gains by having it out there as well. But the second report about the consensual changed everything. And
that's where there's a million different issues with that
and
one.
this is a problem because now that's where everybody went. That's where Matt Barnes formed his opinion. That's where I formed my first opinion. My first opinion was, okay, I get it. You're not supposed to date people in the workplace if you're a person of power. I get it. I've worked at large companies. I understand it. I've seen the rules in place. I get why it's problematic. I get it. But there's no way the Celtics would have fired Ime Udoka over a consensual relationship just because the rule book said it. And the Celtics have revealed as much by making it clear that they also didn't discipline the female involved in this, or females. Only Udoka is disciplined. So therefore, simply dating was not the rule that was broken here, not the thing that cost him. But when they said consensual relationship, they made it sound like he's getting suspended for dating someone in the organization. That's crazy. And that's where everything got bananas off of that, because
and you know what I thought,
that's
John?
where the takes exploded.
I'm not gonna sit here and be like, I knew, but you see that word consensual, and the first thing you think is who is spinning with, 'cause that is a spin word, right? Like I don't think anyone was under the impression that Shams had the time
I
to do a full
speculated that right away,
investigation.
Bobby. I said
Yes,
that's from Ime,
that's
because
spin.
and
Someone benefits by having it out there
I
that
tweeted it. I
this was
said it on the
consensual.
show. I said,
Yeah.
look, only one that word has changed the entire narrative, and we don't know what it means, and we don't know for sure that it was. And without that, it's a different story. And that really, and it makes sense that it's Ime, or from Ime's camp, because it paints him as less of a monster, as less of a villain, as less culpable, as more sympathetic.
And he
And
would have more reason for that to be out there than the team would, right?
of
There's a lot of
course,
reasons that the team wouldn't want the details of the violation out there. I mean, it wasn't in the ESPN report for a reason, right? And we know Woj is close to teams and all that. So that first report, I think, actually makes sense from a team perspective. And that's not necessarily a leak per se, right? Because a leak's like one staffer kind of putting it out there, or just someone going rogue possibly. That sort of seems a little more strategic, where it's kind of like an advance on what they were going to release anyway the
I
next
know
day.
someone's saying here both. I didn't mean monster. I apologize, Matt. I'm saying, I bad choice of words. But people are saying Shams and Woj. Yes, Shams first, then Woj piggyback. But consensual was part of both reports.
I think
That
Woj followed up with consensual
Yeah, after
after
Shams did,
Shams did,
absolutely.
yeah.
And so that's what it became with. And again, what we're learning is it might have been consensual at one point, but at some point it became problematic, and that's what Shams kind of reported later. So we're going to dig into a little bit more. We're going to play a couple more clips from the thing and just kind of get your take. We're going to talk about Brad. Talk about, you don't want to talk about, I don't think Brad cares how he comes off in this, but I will say Brad came off amazing in this press conference, both in terms of his raw emotion. Never heard him swear, never expected we would ever hear him swear, just to see how
Yeah, this was a real
angry
moment.
and lit up he was. It was real. You don't see that from Brad very often, and how affected he was by this. So we'll play that soundbite in a little bit, and we're also going to talk about yet another devastating piece of news that's befallen the Celtics, which just came in an hour or so ago. But before that, we do want to tell you, what do we want to tell you about right here? We'll tell you about this one first. And first nighttime, then morning. Two of our sponsors, Calm and of course Athletic Greens. But first, we'll tell you about Calm. You guys know about Calm. They've been with us all year. It is #1 mental wellness app. Gives you the tools to improve the way you feel. It's amazing. I wish, Jimmy might be the biggest advocate of all, but we all use it. Reduce stress and anxiety, guided meditations, improve focus, curated music tracks, rest and recharge with Calm's imaginative sleep stories. Guys, we used Calm to get us through the first 45 games of last season. If we've ever needed it, we need it now, right? Like, we got to bring it down a little bit.
How about the Rob news coming right after?
I just want to cry. And then I watched Nadal and Federer cry, and then I actually cried. But yeah, but Calm, we need it right now. So this is great stuff. It's designed to relax your body, uplift your mind. Everyone on the Garden Report uses it, has been using it for an entire year. Tremendous product, tremendous sponsor. We ask you very kindly to support our sponsors. If you're at all interested in this sort of thing, at least check it out. Go to the URL, calm.com/garden. It's an amazing discount. You don't get 40% off most things. 40% off a Calm Premium subscription. New content is added every week, so you've always got stuff to mess around with. You'll obviously have your favorites, but it's really great to have the new variety that comes in, which is terrific. 100 million people around the world use it. So you should use it too, to take care of your mind, ready to help you stress less, sleep more, live happier. Once again, exclusive to the Garden Report here. 40% off a premium subscription. Go to com.com/garden. That is com.com/garden.
This is a
40%
week
off
where it's hard to
and
sleep.
unlimited access to Com's entire library. It is a really good deal. And if you do it, and the orders are rolling in, and that's great. And I'm sorry, we are back ordered, and I promise we're sending these out. You will get a phenomenal garden t-shirt if you screenshot your receipt. Make sure you use the promo code, screenshot your receipt, send me the receipt, your address, your shirt size, DM me on Twitter, and I will send you a phenomenal t-shirt. Good.
Nothing phenomenal going on this week.
Yeah. So, Bobby, I know you had a lot of notes and you were there, and obviously you wrote about it, and everyone should check it out over at clnsmedia.com. Bobby Manning's take on the entire situation, as well as, all the reporting that's going to go into covering this story over the next few days and weeks as we get more reaction and more details. And, of course, into next week when the season really officially kicks off. Media Day Monday, practice Tuesday, and we're off and running. So here we go. Final reactions to the press conference here before we get into some on-the-court related news.
Yeah, there was a lot, right? I thought Brad's reaction and Wick's reaction in particular to the notion that Brad might coach in this situation was telling, right? Brad, no way. Wick, we talked about it. So Brad wants nothing to do with coaching this team. Wick seemed to think this might be a good idea. Possibly, we're investing a lot of money in this team this
Could
year.
save me
big
a buck.
Expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did save some money making you GM. No, I know. That was interesting. It was two different people. If you could get what they were actually thinking when that came out, which was Brad was like, no effing way am I coaching again. And Wick was like, I kind of wanted him to. We did talk about Brad's reaction to the rampant speculation and the women being dragged in to the thing, and that was early in the press conference. The way he responded to it. I want to play the soundbite for those of you who didn't hear it, because like I said, it's Brad like you never really hear him ever.
I thought, we have a lot of talented women in our organization, and I thought yesterday was really hard on them, and I think that nobody can control Twitter speculation and rampant bullshit, but I do think that we as an organization have a responsibility to make sure we're there to support them now, because a lot of people were dragged unfairly into that. And so I would just add that and go from there. I know you'll probably have questions and comments, but I think that's important to address for them.
So I'm not using names. People have seen some of the internet speculation. You know that there's people who Brad is close with. You know that Brad has, obviously there's, Brad is someone who's coached and obviously now in the front office has a relationship with many people, both in the front office and, in the operations side and on the court and things like that. So obviously he's close to a lot of this and was clearly, I said, I didn't expect that at all for Brad. And that emotion and that look that was on his face stayed the entire press conference. He looked just like I said, both. There's this combination of mad and sad the entire time.
Yeah, it was a jarring moment for sure. And I think it showed for him in particular, not only the hurt that this caused him, and Woj talked about it, that breach of trust. Stevens hired Udoka, and this falls on him in some way through that vetting process, and he probably feels some level of responsibility for not only that, but the fallout, right? What can we do here to stop this? Employees are probably coming to him saying, why am I seeing my photo online? Like what is going on here? And people are probably begging for answers at a time where only a small group within the organization was privy to what was going on, I'd imagine, there through the meetings and the deliberations over what was going on. So that seemed genuine to me, right?
I think it's
This
genuine.
hurt.
It's genuine. It hurts. I think it hurts because it's under your watch. It's almost like, oh my God, I put my people in this bad
And
position.
we know Brad, he says it all the time. It's the people first for him. That's always what he emphasized as coach and certainly as president of the organization.
With Brad, you believe it. It's all about relationships. You're talking about him leaving the professional basketball team to go be with a former Butler teammate who was sick and terminal, in their final days, just because that was what was important. Like, he didn't even think twice about it. He's like, it's the people in my life and the people who I've helped and the connections that I've made that matter. So he was shook. You really know that Brad is about that. He's not. Whether you thought he was a great coach, whether you think he's a terrific GM, he is all about that. And so he was definitely shook. And I think it's a good look. And as I said, I don't think Brad's doing it to score points, but at a time where there's the entire organization, their handling of this event, and whether or not they have cultural problems within the organization, and as a result of those cultural problems, it cost them, obviously a head coach in a situation that they may or may not have handled as well as they'd liked. They could be alienating players based off decision. The ripple effects are significant, but on top of that, there's a human toll, which is clearly already taken. And the sad thing is, it's not going anywhere. It's going to continue, and there's nothing they can do. They can't give details, but they can't stop it, and that's it. That's the end of it. They're stuck. It's going to continue. Are you kidding me? The entire internet's still going to light up over who was it? What was it? How many? What's the story? Whether it's gossip or whether it's to be able to formulate an opinion, it's going to continue on. So it is tough.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of that's cultural. And this was kicked around on ESPN too. There's such a fixation on who's the woman, what did she do, and there's so few women in sports that you're able to boil it down. If this organization, and this isn't about the Celtics, this is any organization in sports, it's a male-dominated industry. If the Celtics were 80% women staffers, you wouldn't be able to go, oh, it's her. So that's another layer to this. There's only a few, so people are able to pick and choose them and roll with it. And that's what happened here online. And Brad's right. I don't know what you can necessarily do in that spot, but if this was a leak, that was an unintended consequence of it. And people were able to roll with that. And I could imagine if someone did leak it, them not realizing that that's what the internet was going to go do after that and roll with that. So
they're going to
again, we'll never really know. We'll never really know on that leak thing. Like you're just always guessing on that.
I threw up Dirk's comment here. Dirk, one of our super loyal followers of the show here. We did touch upon this a little bit, Dirk, and I think it is valuable. And it was one of the things that kind of allowed me to kind of reach my conclusion before we had any details. And again, we don't have a ton. And among those are that the two things we absolutely know. The Celtics were so horrified by what they saw in the report that they acted swiftly and decisively to levy one of the most severe punishments ever, the most severe punishment ever laid out to a coach or an executive for anything. And it was a punishment, anyway. One, and two, as you mentioned in the statement, Udoka said, I accept the team's decision. Now, what we don't know if that's a admission of guilt, culpability, taking responsibility for his actions, recognizing that his actions were bad, and showing contrition over that, or part of it maybe having to do with, a settlement that they might be working on, and that it's don't fight it, accept it, work this out, we'll get you some money, we'll get you out the door, we'll give you an opportunity to go get another job, this will all be over soon. That might be where they're headed with this, because what does Udoka want to do? Twist in the wind? Be suspended for a year and then get, whatever, find out next year that he's not coming back or what? This ends in termination most likely, or separation. And I think Ime wants to recoup some money. And then I think Ime wants his freedom to go look for another job, because he's never going to
sit on the sideline.
He's never coaching here again. So
yeah. And it's hard to imagine, and this got asked today, but it didn't get answered, a situation where next year he walks back into this team and takes over again. Is there any chance of that?
Here's where there's a chance. I think the players, there's a world in which the players welcome him back. There's a world in which the fans welcome him back. You saw it happen with Alex Cora, and I'm not comparing cheating at baseball to whatever it was he may did. And again, without details, you can't know. I think if the allegations, if the stuff that he did was so bad that you could never bring a person like that back into your organization, then no. And not only that, I think his coaching career is in jeopardy if the details come out and it's very, very, very bad. But I just don't know how you do that culturally. If you have a problem here and you know, I don't know how you do that to the women in the workplace. if the findings were significant, even if you're like, well, he spent a year and he's repented, and the players kind of like
particularly if
him.
they're trying to address their own concerns internally.
It's hard. You'd have to feel a bunch of things, that he accepted it, changed, showed contrition, and that there was a level of understanding within the organization that he could be welcomed back and it wouldn't be weird. I think it's very unlikely. From moment one, as soon as 1 year suspension was put on the table, my immediate reaction is he's gone. So
yeah, and this was characterized as a breach of trust, which is another hurdle that would have to be overcome in that case. Which brings us to the new coach. If they know Ime more likely than not is done here, when we talked about this last show, you want to move on to a more sustainable coaching situation than this interim one probably is here, right? And this is no knock on Joe Mazzulla.
You're giving him a chance to win it.
All right, I guess.
So right now, Bobby, this is just simply a case of it's continuity over, going in there and messing with everything. It's too late in the game to go find a real coach. I know I suggested maybe they do it. I would consider it, and I would have considered it. If they thought they had a guy they would have loved in the process, someone who maybe they've already interviewed for the head coaching job, who's available somewhere as an assistant, that they would have liked almost as much as Ime. I don't know that exists, because a lot of the people who they did interview landed jobs elsewhere. But if there's a person that they love, maybe they bring him in. But I think they clearly opted for continuity. And so if they truly view Mazzulla as an up-and-comer, if this is the type of person that would have had a crack at head coaching vacancies next year, you give him a chance.
He had one this year. The Jazz interviewed him.
You get to next year, and if he earned it, you either hire him outright, which you could if it's in a slam dunk, or you give the appearance of, keep making it fair and give him a chance to interview for the position, but you open it up to other candidates. But I think that's where this goes. I don't think they do it now.
And by the way, our guy here at the network, Jeff Goodman, raved about Mazzulla, didn't he? So he likes the decision to go with him. He's known him for a long time. There were questions about his past, and Stevens addressed them today. I thought it was a good question that came up, because a lot of our chatters yesterday had questions about that too. The 2009 arrest for domestic battery in a bar. And that was worth looking into here, especially in the aftermath of a coach going out in controversy. You're going to bring one in who has past questions. And Stevens not only addressed them pretty decisively today, but sort of put his own reputation on the line too. Like, he told me he changed. I believe him, and that's on me. Like,
I'll play it. Here's Brad talking about Mazzulla. And again, for people who don't know, when he was it West Virginia?
Yep.
There was an incident in a bar involving an assault. And that he was asked about that, and here's the answer.
And then when we were considering hiring him as an assistant, I vetted that and the incidents when he was in college really thoroughly. And I will tell you this, I believe strongly in Joe's substantiveness as a person. I believe strongly, and he'll tell you, he's been very open with me about how those moments have impacted him as in every which way, and you can see it in the way he carries himself. You could see that for a long time. We've had years to get to know him. He's been working with us for 3 years, you probably have seen articles that were written around that time that I'm sure that I read 3 years ago before I hired him as assistant. But I believe strongly that probably shaped him into who he is today, in a really, really good way. But, he'll be the first to tell you he's 110% accountable for that. And I'll be the first to tell you that I believe in him.
It's decisive. It's definitive. I don't know that people want to hear you're a better man for having done something like that. I'm not saying people don't deserve second chances. My only thought on this is the optics had to have been considered, right? You have, and that's what I find a little strange here is, again, perception matters, right? Like, I don't know how many people were aware that this was a situation with Joe Mazzulla in his past, because you're not as concerned with an assistant with a D2 college background. You're just like, oh, they got a zillion assistants here.
This is the face of the organization for at least a moment.
Now you got the face of the organization, and if you did have a cultural problem and you got rid of somebody who had questionable behavior towards women in the office, and you replaced them with somebody who has a past, and again, I understand it's a long time ago, the optics of that, again, you think every person in the organization is going to wait and give a fair shake, or they might just have a visceral reaction to this type, to him being put into that place? It was interesting that not surfaced, but again, a thing that wasn't very well known and very well publicized is now kind of front and center with the new hire.
Yeah, and we do this a lot. That was the whole story the last couple of days, right? Oh, we're talking about Ime. Why aren't we talking about Brett Favre? And why aren't we talking about Robert Sarver? And his was 1 year, and his was one. Not every situation's the same. Ime got penalized for something he allegedly did within this organization this year. Does Mazzulla bear some responsibility for what he did? Of course. And it was 13 years ago. By all accounts, nothing's happened since. And it certainly didn't happen within this organization. So I don't think it's valid in terms of bringing him into the organization. But what you say there in terms of optics in a moment like this, where you're trying to restore some faith in the organization,
it's potentially
going from one controversy to answering questions about this guy's controversy is kind of wacky.
It's risky. It's almost a little tone deaf. It's a little.
And again, I'm not saying it's the wrong move.
I don't know exactly. And again, you have Brad, who believes in him deeply, and that endorsement, I'm sure, carries a lot of weight in those walls. And Mazzulla himself may have people are aware, and they feel that whatever it was is so far in his past that it did in fact shape him and turn him into a better person. So yeah, all of these things are possible. I'm literally only talking about the optics and it being a little bit curious. So that's interesting. I'm curious how much deeper it goes and whether that becomes problematic. So right, and somebody just mentioned here, Terry mentioned it. Man, maybe it's the right coaching move. Is it the right cultural move? Again, I don't know, because I don't know what the perception is of Joe Mazzulla in those walls. And if that's something that's really important to you, something that you feel is fractured right now, that certainly is something that I would think would be considered. But again, you have to think they felt okay about it, right?
That's the most important thing on the coaching side, because we have two situations here. We have a workplace one, we have a basketball one. We seem to think that the workplace issue was so bad that they took a hit on the basketball side, which for most teams is the most important thing, winning. They took that hit, and now they have to restore it. And that's what this hire is all about here. Sure, the optics of it at an organizational level matter, but like you said, the optics and how this looks to the team is going to be most important. And by all accounts, Tatum in particular really loves this guy. Stevens, of course, brought him in, thought highly of him, and saw what his coaching capability was. Stevens, his job is sort of attached to the success of the team, right? So Stevens, at least entering a very important year, felt good, and he endorsed him in a staggering way today, saying that Mazzulla, even compared to himself, and Brad's like this, right? He always kind of talks down his role on things, but is a million times better than me for the spot. There's no one better than Mazzulla for the spot. So not only did he endorse his character, he seems to really believe in this guy as a coach. And we don't know. The inexperience factor is one I'm thinking about a lot more here, but the buy-in factor for a team that is extraordinarily skilled, because we've seen a lot of first-time coaches with no experience take over around the league, and I hate to go here, but the foot on the line and Harden's hamstring and Kyrie's knee might have been what prevented Steve Nash, who we joke about every single day, from winning a championship in his first year.
Yep.
So Joe Mazzulla has a stacked roster here. If he's able to get them to buy in, carry forward that message that Ime had, and just maintain some stability and trust, that's all he really needs to do, right?
And yes, so Joe Mazzulla has a stacked but ever dwindling roster. We're going to talk about that and the latest news involving the Celtics before we wrap the show. But first, I want to tell you about our other sponsor. And this is how we like to break it down, right? We talk about calm. That's what you take at night. And then in the morning, what do? You wake up and bang. You take down some. You take out some athletic greens, right?
The way you describe it, John, I can just see you like boom. It
Boom.
just goes right back.
Drop it. So again, it's our partner, Athletic Greens. Okay. And again, we've talked about this a lot. And hopefully, by now, many of you, and I know actually many of you have, because you guys have sent me the proof. What is it? One delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced ingredients to help you start your day right. We consume it. Why? It makes me feel better. I bring it with me when I travel. I took it with me on vacation. I start my day with it. It's lifestyle friendly. It's diet friendly, no matter what you're on. It has no sugar, supports mental clarity and alertness, helps with sleep quality and recovery. Supported by thousands of medical professionals, a zillion 5-star reviews, health experts, celebrities, athletes, what have you. So right now it's the time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. One scoop and a cup of water. That's it. And again, to make it easy, we're going to give you a deal. If you go to athleticgreens.com/garden, take ownership over your health, pick up your ultimate daily nutritional insurance. By signing up now, we'll give you 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Again, we're talking about $3 a day for your health. And if you are concerned with your health, you're probably spending more than that, kind of picking and chewing and trying to piecemeal it together. This is a one-stop shopping solution. It's great. And what do you get? With everything, phenomenal. You get a phenomenal t-shirt. So
I wish there was something to say was phenomenal. I can't even think of one thing.
Nothing is phenomenal but that t-shirt. So get it now, because everything else is crap. But AG1 is great. The t-shirt is great. Send me your receipt. DM me, John_Zanis, and I will send you a t-shirt. Last thing we wanted to talk about, Bobby. Come on.
What
are we doing here? I mean, this is what bugged me. First of all, well, was it Devaney broke the story first?
Yeah.
On Rob, and then other people picked up on it. Sean Devaney gets the credit. He broke the story, even though everyone picked up all of the other guys, that Rob was having surgery. The initial timetable was 4 to 6 weeks. That wasn't in Devaney's story. That was in somebody else's story.
No, that was in Devaney's too.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
So a day later, he writes a story and say, actually, the team and no one really has confirmed 4 to 6 weeks. So let's not necessarily cleave to that. And what do you know? Celtics later on this evening send out a update about successful surgery, which means nothing. All successful surgery means you didn't die. So
did they say successful?
Everything is successful.
Yeah.
Successful surgery means it happened without complication, and the patient is alive, and like they didn't have to cut.
The only unsuccessful surgery was who was the Chargers quarterback who
Tyrod Taylor, who got stabbed in the lungs.
I hope they didn't put a successful surgery on their release.
4 to 6 made people think, okay, training camp preseason is he's back 2 weeks in. Okay, this isn't only 8 to 12. This is 8 to 12 to resume basketball activities. That means And we've seen this before. I'm not saying this will happen here. We've seen that before. What does basketball activities mean? It means endless reports of he started doing one-on-one work. He jogged a little today. He did 2-on-2. Oh, a little 3-on-3. Hasn't yet progressed to 5-on-5. Oh, geez, not yet. We don't know when that's going to happen. Then that happens. Then eventually a game. You could be looking at
Dr. John. You normally get some insight on the surgery. So what was the description here? They were cleaning out loose bodies.
Yeah. There's no question. No, based on what the Celtics said, they didn't say there was anything like they had to redo, like trim a piece of the meniscus, or maybe who knows, or fix a ligament or something else that was damaged. That appears to not be the case. It was cleanup, and
little lag, but you're back.
I felt for again. I got the Ethernet going, guys. Come on. But the timetable is brutal. 8 to 12 to resume basketball activities.
So I asked that, is this normally a tough surgery to come back from?
No, arthroscopic surgery can be used for everything. It's not one thing. Arthroscopic surgery is just it's in place of incision. All it is a different style. You do put a little camera in, and you use little teeny tools robotically that can do it. That just keeps you from having to slice open and do a big incision and go in that way. It's just less invasive. That's basically it. But you're doing it for various different reasons, a scope. And oftentimes it is to go in and do cleanups and XYZ. 8 to 12. I didn't see that coming. At all. And again, everyone will say he came back too early. He did. I don't know whether it is. I'm just dealing with the here and the now. And the here and the now is you're very likely without Rob until 2023 and possibly well into 2023. Want to be optimistic and say he resumes basketball activities in 8 weeks? That's still, again, 2 months, October, all of November, and he starts to ramp up in December to maybe return a few weeks after that. You're still talking pretty close to the end of the year. So I do not expect to see Robert Williams in a Celtics uniform on the court in 2022. And now you're talking 2025.
The whole season?
22, the year of our Lord, 2022. Okay? I'm saying the actual new year in January. But
so 12 weeks,
20, 25, 30 games, right?
Yeah, 12 weeks brings you to 30 games and December 16th. So it's feasible right around the new year on the long end of things he could return, but there's no reason to rush it. We've seen Rob have trouble coming back from injuries before. There's certainly the shape dynamic too. He's not going to be on his feet much, I'd imagine, coming back from knee surgery. And I'm just reading this release again here. So loose bodies, we knew that this had to be a little bit of a cleanup, but also to address swelling in the left knee. So swelling, pain, that restricted movement that we heard about throughout the playoff run there, that continued to be an issue, you would imagine, throughout the summer. So this goes back to what we talked about when this surgery first got announced. He wasn't able to do anything this summer. And I of course, have been told there was a small small tear in that knee. So maybe that's what the swelling was caused by, another small tear in here, perhaps another damage to the meniscus here. I don't have that exactly, but this is a real setback for Rob. Not only because he's going to miss a ton of time here, but
as Big Kes says,
come on.
Come on.
We got to do a Spaces.
I know.
People got a lot to say.
We can and should have do a Spaces. Yeah. Sorry, guys. We've been lax on that. We had a boring last month of the off season, and then all this stuff to talk about. We'll definitely do something to get your take.
As long as it's not email conspiracy hour, right?
Everybody. I mean, look, it could be, but I don't want. Like I said, there's certain things I don't want to listen to, like names and theories.
I'm seeing in the chat all show here, but
I get it.
Back to Rob.
Yep.
We all had hopes, and Ime had a hope. This was the guy that he singled out just to kind of loop everything together here. This whole disastrous offseason. They really had a lot of hope that after 30 minutes per game last year, moving into a starting role, becoming a defensive player of the year contender, and really when you look back on the impact he had on this team, he might have had the best case to win defensive player of the year. Can he take another step play a little bit more, ease Horford's role. You'd have to imagine that that's what they expect.
It's another lost season. It's a lost
Yeah.
season for Rob's development, not for him.
Yep.
Can he come back and be effective? Yes. It's another lost
It'll be the
season
same Rob
of Rob
if he comes
taking a leap.
back. Yeah.
At best,
Mhm.
because you're talking about any training is gone, any ability to like work on things, refine your game, get your body right. It's gone. It's gone. You're just trying to get back into playing shape at this point. But any improvements are gone. You cannot make a leap as a basketball player year over year because you had no time to spend on your body and on your game. You know, everyone likes to use the expression get in the lab this offseason. He can't. He couldn't. He sat around for a month and a half. And again, I don't know whether the team wanted him to or he decided to do it unilaterally. It's another thing I'm kind of annoyed about. And, you know, we'll see. And maybe that comes out a little bit and after this Ime stuff in media day. But then he starts playing for a week or two and it hurts. And he's, oh, I can't do it anymore. That sucks.
It's brutal. And you think of the way he raises this team's ceiling when he
That's
is
it.
out there. 10 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor versus off. And the 24 points per possession that they were better than everyone they played when they had their starting five of Rob, Smart, Tatum, Brown, and Horford. It just gave you that extra edge on everyone else that no one could compete with. We saw them blast the Warriors, and I know Curry got hurt in that game, but they just were tearing through everybody. Memphis when they were at their best, and just all these different teams that they tore apart during that 22 or 25 stretch there. This makes you wonder if this group's ever going to be able to get back to that level, or is each passing season with this core going to be, if Rob's healthy, they'll win it.
That's what
if
I
he's
said.
Not, they're screwed.
I hate playing that game, but I mean, that's the honest, look, I mean, certainly if Rob was healthy all year and you lost Tatum or Brown, you're in worse shape, but you're counting on Tatum, Brown, Smart as givens, you know, and Al Horford has been pretty freaking dependable. So the only wild card who you're talking about, is he going to be there is Rob. And the difference, as you said, with him on and off is just on another level. I mean, and again, certainly someone like Tatum, you know, he goes down, you're done. But I mean, Rob is the difference between them being a very good team and a team that has a legitimate chance to win a title when he's right. And
I was curious, the Smart, Brown, Tatum,
and not only that, Bobby, the Rob we haven't seen yet that we're wondering if he exists, if he's ever given the chance to have a healthy offseason and take an actual leap in terms of his conditioning and his game, could take him to heights we've not even imagined possible.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is it's so tantalizing because you're like, this guy barely even knows like which basket he's shooting at, and he's still this insanely impactful player. His smarts I mean, I don't mean to drag his intelligence. He's an extremely high IQ basketball player, and when he's focused, he's just got something about him. In addition to the freakish athleticism, he's different. He's a different dude.
Yeah, and I remember talking to the people close to him last spring when I was doing a story on his comeback from the injury, and even they admit he's not there offensively right now. Like, he's not commanding that role. The skills aren't quite developed enough on that end. Like, we know we got to get back out there this summer and really start to hone his offensive game. And that's what we want to see. And that's what certainly the people around him want to see as well. And it just seems because of the health here that they were incapable of it. Now, pushing through, coming back early, I know everybody's going to go, oh, did they push him too hard? Through my reporting, this was his call to come back through 3 weeks. His agent, his people around him were saying, Rob, we're up 2-0 in this Nets series. Maybe we should wait another game or two here. And he was adamant. Ime challenged him to play through some pain, to be available. And he really took that, personally, and responded and got back in the game for them. And he suffered that bone bruise against the Bucks and still gutted through pain and really made a big impact in the finals despite being so limited. So I'm not ruling Rob out yet. I know every time it gets hurt, our eyes roll in the back of our head and we're like, this guy. But I feel like he still showed real growth last year.
He did. You want to believe. You want to believe. But all the signs are pointing to, like, it's going to be like this forever. And at some point,
But that's his body. I don't think it's him.
I know, but that's the thing is, like, at some point you're worried, like, not only is it going to be like this forever, but one of these things is going to be the tipping point that's going to put him in that's going to change his trajectory. And instead of it being what can Rob become, you're going to say, like, can we get 80% of what we had last year? Can we get 70%? Until he's just done. He's damaged goods and he's barely effective anymore. And that's my fear, is one of these surgeries, he's going to come back and be like, that's not the same guy. Like, oh no, he's broke. You know, we broke him for good. And that's the reality I'm struggling with.
Yeah, and he's part of this core now. You need him. And the players know it too. How many times did we hear Tatum and Brown say, we need this guy? We tell him
Yep.
all the time, you're crucial. If we're going somewhere, we need Rob. And you saw the impact he made. Go back and watch those finals highlights. There's a million plays where the Warriors scored where they were just kind of scrambling for the rebound after he was in the play and forced them to miss so badly that they had to chase it down and get a putback. And that was on some good plays for the Warriors. There were a bunch of other ones where he was able to stop the Warriors. And I think the final number was they were plus 34 in the finals with Rob on the floor or something to that effect. They were a big, big plus. So they dominated when he was available, even in the series that they lost.
Yep.
And now he's not available to start this year. And what does that mean for Al, who took on a bigger burden last year, and now with no proven backup on the roster is going to have to play 35 plus minutes a night, exactly what they didn't want from him this season.
Yep.
And then, you have Grant, who we talked about throughout last year, didn't thrive as a starter. I actually just looked at the lineup with Grant in for Rob, minus 14 per 100. That starting unit with Grant in Rob's place. So I'd imagine Brogdon's going to start. I think that makes a lot more sense.
We have to accept that Grant is a situational player, and it doesn't work in all situations. And again, that's why he's a bench guy.
And he's kind of your backup big now, right? Which isn't great either, because part of his success last year was moving to the perimeter and guarding the KDs and the Giannis's and these guys who are facing him up rather than backing him down.
The Celtics actually, you want to talk about strategy going forward? Everyone's saying, okay, the Celtics need to embrace the death lineup. One of those kind of death lineups that have no center, like none. And I'm talking like Tatum at the center, Tatum, Brown, and three guards. And
didn't they try that under Stevens?
I know, but just do it and learn to make it work, because you have switchable position. Everybody on the court is switchable. You've got big guards, and you got to try the White, Brogdon, Tatum. You've got to try it, because
they tried it with Gordon Hayward.
Why try Tatum, Brogdon, Derek White, and Cornette? Why try it? Like, yes, will you need to play Cornette 8-10 minutes a night while Rob is gone? Sure. But what you need to,
people calling Cornette joking, come on.
Listen, turn a disadvantage into an advantage, okay? They're big, make them slow, okay? It's the whole Sun Tzu stuff, just like, don't try to play the game everyone else plays with inferior players at those positions. Embrace what you have, which is play positionless basketball. You have to do it. You have to do it.
You have to utilize what you have at this point. You don't have the personnel to go double big where it gets you an advantage.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't find yourself in positions where Horford's got to sit and you're playing Grant at the center with bench pieces. You're going to get run off the court for those times. Embrace small ball lineups and play athletic and play fast. Try it.
Can the team transition at that point, though? They have time here, right? It might come at the cost of losing some games early in the season, but stylistically, you're right. The personnel they have are going to force them to change the way they play a little bit. But the question is, how much does the regular season ultimately matter for this group? Can they get by to where Rob comes back and they can regain that identity that they had last year? If Mazzulla is going to coach this the same way Ime did, and organizationally, I'm sure these are conversations that happen as well. Like, what kind of team do we want to be? I'm sure that'll be a question more than ever now that Ime's out of the picture. They're going to have to make the call. Do we continue down the Ime route, which was proven to work big, versatile, Brown at the 2, Tatum at the 3, double big. That
Just
worked. I know you don't love it, John, but that
I know,
brought them
but
to the
just
NBA
it's
Finals.
fine. It's fine, but you're trying to do two things. It did one thing for you, but it also slows down your offense to a crawl, and you play with a really slow pace, and it makes it harder for your team to score. So I want to see some pace on this team, and sometimes you might have to force the issue, which is let's put a bunch of fast people out there and say run, man, and just try it. You know, as I said, is you're not going to replicate what it is you're missing with Rob. So try something
It's
different.
all about how big of an impact Brogdon makes, right? Can Brogdon be Gordon Hayward? Because Hayward allowed you to play that way, right? 3 wings, quicker, more versatile on the perimeter. Brogdon's going to have to be reliable for this team this year. And that's another question. He hasn't played, 60-plus games since 2019. So this is another guy that you're probably penciling in to miss some games here. And you don't have wing depth. You don't have reliable big depth.
Yeah.
You have a little bit of guard depth here, and that's where we kick around. Do you have to make a trade at this point?
And people, and so here's my take. And yeah, maybe you need a body, but like by trade, I mean, what's the difference between trading for somebody right now or signing somebody off the scrap heap or a bunch of 10-day contract guys? You're talking warm bodies that are just going to fill a roster spot, and it's a break glass in case of emergency. Nobody you're bringing in at this point makes an impact for you. They don't. So the reality is, everyone's asking, what do we do? What you do is you just hold the line. You just treat it like an injury in the middle of the season, and what do you do?
There's only one problem with that, though, is you're overexerting Horford.
Yes, you are, but you just don't care about it. You recognize that we might fall to the 6th seed or something like that. And so what? If we hit the ground, if we've got all of our guys cooking and we're ready to go and we're peaking in March and April with everybody fully healthy, great, done. We're fine with that. We'll play whomever, wherever. That's all you can do at this point. You just don't worry about being the top seed in the East, the top 2 seed. You just play. And whatever happens, happens.
And that's what they're going to do, I think. That reporting's out there. I think that's their mindset right now is let's see what we have. They really like, and I know we roll our eyes when we hear it, and we're going to see it, and it's going to be tested. They like Sam Hauser and Luke Cornett. They do. So let's see what they can do. Let's just see it. Give them a chance. How many times, John, when Romeo and Neesmith and these guys are Pritchard, you scream, play the kids, see what they have. And these aren't necessarily kids or great prospects, but these are guys who thrived in Maine and were blocked by other players last year.
Yep.
So let's see it. It's gonna be one of the things I have my eye on.
We will see. Anyway, I wish we had more good news. We don't, but we're back. Certainly we're always available here at the Garden Report. If there's breaking news, you can count on us to jump on here and talk to you. You can find out whether or not we're going live by following us on Twitter at John_Zanis, at Real Bob Manning, or follow Celtics CLNS on Twitter. We'll always put out notifications when there's a show. Simplest thing you can do is subscribe to our YouTube channels, hit that little bell, and turn on your notifications.
And the podcast version too.
And turn on your notifications and ding, there you go. What I do want to tell people, and this one's actually super important, okay? Maybe I should have said it earlier, but we talked about supporting our sponsors. One thing you really do, for one, we love watching the video. We love having you here live in the chat. Some people obviously pick it up after and watch the video as well, but you can also grab the audio version. So please check it out at the Garden. There's a little barcode there, but check out the audio version of the Garden Report.
Nicely done.
Very cool. One thing I'll ask, this is my nice ask. This is my, please help us out. Because the Garden Report is such a prominent video show over these years, I'm not going to say we've neglected the audio, but we rely on the audio a little bit less than we used to because obviously we're here and we're doing these live shows with you all the time. But one thing we could really use is some fresh ratings and reviews on our Garden Report audio podcast because most of the ratings and reviews are extremely old from when the show was a completely different show. And I'd really like to boost those ratings and reviews. So I'll ask you guys, if you're fans of our show, whether you listen to the audio version or not, if you could jump on here and leave us a good rating or review on Apple Podcasts here, of the Garden Report podcast. We would greatly appreciate that. And also, if you're just on the go and you can't watch video or you're driving, you can always pick up this show on audio version. It's the same exact thing, and just listen to what we have to say, and that's cool too. So it's an option for you if you don't have an opportunity to watch all the video, but we could really use ratings and reviews. So I ask kindly, if you can, please do so.
Yeah, I love when I'm not on the show. I always listen to the podcast version driving around after
Yeah.
the next day. So it's great thing to have.
Yeah. So thank you again, guys. And there's a couple people who say they listen to the pod. For those of you that do, awesome. We would love fresh ratings and reviews. I really would appreciate that. I never ask for that sort of stuff, but it really does help us. So that would be great if you do, especially if you are listening to it already. One more shout out to our sponsors, Athletic Greens. Go to athleticgreens.com/garden, free 1-year supply of vitamin D, 5 free travel packs. It's a one and done, all-in-one supplement with 75 vitamins and minerals, 1 scoop in the morning in a cup of water, and you are done, and you are on the road to better health. And of course, Calm, the #1 health and wellness app, great for sleep, great for relaxation, meditation. Get your mind and bite. Go to calm.com/garden. Receive a 40% Calm premium subscription if you subscribe to either of these. If you purchase either of these products using our promo code and send me a receipt, I will send you a phenomenal t-shirt. And again, as I said, there's not a lot of phenomenal things going on with the Celtics right now, except for this t-shirt. So please come get some, and we'll be happy to send those out to you right away. For those asking where they are, they're coming. I'm sorry. They are coming. It's not an empty promise, but they will be coming soon. So again, thank you guys for all of that stuff. We're back on Monday.
One good thing happened this week. What was Tatum in the ESPN ranking? 7?
6, 7.
6, 7-ish?
No, LeBron was 6. Yeah, Tatum was 7.
That's something.
Yeah.
You still have Tatum and Brown for now. Make the most of the season if you can.
I know, but you just hate the idea of wasting them. So again, but you're right. Again, we are hoping for better news and better vibes and better everything as we go. I will reminder to everybody at home who's just really bummed out about what's going on. Just remember, we suffered through 45 games of what we suffered through last year before things finally turned around.
And we thought there was no hope it would ever turn around. I was in MSG saying this is over, tear it down, and then they win the NBA Finals. So you never know.
Yeah, audio version is on Spotify and everywhere you do get podcasts, for people asking here. Again, thank you guys. We did plan on doing a ratings show with that ESPN list. It's always fun. Maybe when things cool down, we'll break down some of that. But we have a ton of reporting coming up on Monday with Media Day. So you're going to want to follow all CLNS media properties because we're going to have a ton of content coming out. So please do that.
Eastern.
12 o'clock Eastern, we'll be there. Thanks again, guys. We will see you next time, hopefully with some better news to report.